Today is like a hinge. It's that area in our lives where we've been building to this moment, and now all of a sudden we're going to swing like a door swings open into a whole nother area. It's actually kind of a fun day. We're going to do things very differently. You're going to think differently today. You're going to work a little differently. It's just going to be an experience altogether different than what we've had up until this moment. And it's all building towards we've built and built, and now we're about to swing in an area that's going to revolutionize how you think, who you are, what you do. Now, in order to do that, let's review what we've gone through. We started together in saying, okay, what do we long to be? The journey of a knight says, I long to be a man who has a beauty to rescue. Rescue the heart of every woman. The whole concept of how we come alongside and value women and the hearts of women. I dealt with a guy this week that has completely missed that. I mean, completely missed that in his life, almost to the point where, as we were talking, I'm going, there can be no fulfillment whatsoever in part of who you are as a man. You've so missed that area. And he actually understood. I mean, he actually totally embraced it, even though he was sitting there going, I don't know how to think any other way. We talked about the fact that every man not only longs to have a beauty to rescue, that he longs to have an adventure to live, something that makes life significant. Everything about being a knight is exciting and living an adventure. So in order to do that, we take everything we've been building and move it forward. We talked about also the idea that we have to have a battle to fight. That battle to fight is the whole idea that we're going to come alongside of somebody in need and do noble things and knightly and heroic things that come alongside and rescue. Not battles to fight like it's all about like road rage kind of battles. We're talking about battles that are deep within your soul that you say, how would I come alongside and fight for something so noble, so worthwhile that it makes my life make sense? So we started there. We talked about the four positions of a knight. Remember, if you remember, we talked about how as guys, we sometimes have a battle going on around us and we realize we can't handle it and we get beaten and we fall. Well, knight that's fallen isn't doing much. Understand that in the 16 weeks we've been together up until this moment, we've fallen at different times. We've had moments when we've kind of crashed and it hasn't worked real well. What you need to do as a knight, though, is to say, okay, I've fallen. I'm not in the battle. I'm not doing what I need to be doing. So I have to what? Get up. And that's what we've been working on, understanding all of that. We then went to understand that sometimes in the middle of a battle, you realize that while you're still protecting people, they're sort of safe. You can't win at this moment. Sometimes it's just good to take off and run, to flee, to get away. And we talked about that journey early on about, okay, guys, when's the time to run? And then we talked about the amazing concept of standing together. Remember how once you're not falling, you're not fleeing, but you're standing as a unit. Guys, we're not meant to do this thing as a knight alone. So we have guys around us. That's what our campfires are about. That's hopefully what the relationships you build over these last 16 weeks are about. Guys that are kind of pouring into our lives and caring about who we are. And in that part of our journey, as we get there, we get pretty excited about the fact that, you know what, we can stand. We can stand against movement so that those behind us are safe and protected, and it starts to change how we do every day. And then we also talked about this. There are times when you're going to have to advance. You're going to have to move into the ground. Now, when you do that, you leave the protection of the line of guys because you sort of lead the movement, the charge. It's really where we become pretty offensive. We're taking back ground. We're changing the forest. Remember we talked about the forest pretty early on? Right after we talked about the 15 principles that every man needs to have that become his standards. And then we said there's a forest, and in the forest there are things that will guide you, trail markers, because your job is to change the forest, not be changed by the forest. The forest, is our word for life and culture, the world around us. And so how do we alter it instead of it altering us? And we talked about the fact that we have a tribe, and that tribe gives us sort of this overall understanding culturally of what's going on around us and sort of stands for truth in the middle of it. We talked about elders, some key mentors in our life. We talked about personal standards, the 15 principles. We walked through the whole concept of the fact that there's a voice, an inner voice that's the real you, and what that can be and what that can do in our lives. And then we got to the point where spirituality, and part of the hinge that we're on right now is going to take out of this vertical, horizontal world and into the vertical. And that spirituality starts to come alive. We talked about being a spandex male, the guy we don't want to be. Then we talked about our core. We got to the place where we said, okay, how are we going to take care of what's inside of us? Well, we looked at armor. Armor protects us in relationships. We also looked at chainmail. The chainmail is our belief system, that weighty item that lays over top of you that allows you to say, okay, I can now do life because I have certain beliefs. But some of those beliefs are faulty. And so how do we know? And so we began the process of walking through the core. And if you remember when we walked through the core, we found ourselves talking so often about the idea of in this being that we are, all the armor, all the chainmail, everything we've been talking about at that moment is all building towards who's the knight, who is the real being that we're supposed to be. And we talked about the 6 elements of the core. We talked about the body, and with the body, we talked about the brain that thinks, the brain that feels. Remember all that stuff? Talked about the physical body. We talked, and we will talk more in this hinge time about genetics and instincts and all that kind of goes into that world. We talked about our mind and how it thinks. Remember all the different shelves that we've put from king to lover to warrior to friend in all of those areas. But we also considered the shadow. The shadow is fighting against it. The shadow is that part of us that's self-destruction, that self-destructs us and works on destroying others. And we talked about how that impacts us, all again, part of the core. As we've been working through these areas, we actually have covered pretty adequately 3 of the parts of our core. We're going to be, in the next few weeks, getting the other ones to understand how does all come together, because this is where what's inside the armor, what's inside the image of the knight, what's inside of all the stuff that we have is this ability that we have to say, okay, I can make a huge difference if my core comes together. So everything we're doing is to bring that to an understanding, to a place. Now, to give you a vision of this, way back weeks ago, we read through in the very front of your book this what we call the Code of Honor of a Knight. I want to read it for you again, and I want to read it for you with this in mind. We're going to ask that you get it signed, that you will sign it yourself and get it sort of signed by one of the guys in your campfire or somebody else significant in your life that has witnessed this being true as both who you are becoming and the desire of your heart. This is the passion. This is what you want to do. Now, don't sign this until you're saying, I'm ready to do it. Now, to graduate from Knights of the 21st Century, you don't have to sign this. In fact, I'd rather you not sign if it's not true. Knights don't do what isn't true. So I want us to think in terms of this and say this is sort of a special thing that I will put. This code will never change. It'll always be the code that we hold ourselves to as knights. So let me read it for you so you can get a sense of what it's all about. Here's our code of honor. To the women who have longed for a world filled with knights, may they not be disappointed. May all women feel safe, respected, and loved by the men around them. To our daughters, may they recognize the difference between a male and a man, and may they find the latter. To our sons, may they see our knighthood and go on in their own personal quest and take the journey of manhood further than we have before them. To the men who have brought honor before us, we join you. To the males who have brought disappointment, we offer healing. To the world in which we find ourselves, may you discover renewed hope and the courage to change and the different true manhood brings. That's our code. That's the code that each one of us says, if I'm a knight, that's what I'm about. It lets us know. It's where all the principles come together. It's where everything starts to work, our core completely functioning. If you're at the place where you're ready to sign that today, sign it. Sign it with somebody else who will witness it and say, you know what, I see the intent of your heart. I see your movement in that. It could be your mate. It could be a guy in your campfire. It could be a close personal friend. It could be one of your children. It could be one of your parents. But have somebody who knows your heart sign it as a witness that this is where you're at. It is something noble about saying, here's what I want to live by, the code that I want to move forward in. It's interesting that there are times when that code gets messed up for us as guys. I think there are times when I feel like we don't know how to be this man. We sort of say, I want to be that. I talked to a guy, his name is Dave, and Dave was saying to me that all the illnesses that he's going through right now, he's had a bad botched surgery, which has really actually cost him parts of his organs. And he's had some other illnesses that are now diseases that are irreversible. So his physical limitations have suddenly become predominant in his life. And as they became predominant, he found himself going, you know what? I cannot get to this man I want to be anymore because he only defined himself this way. It'd be like talking to Dave. It'd be like if this box represents his mind, his view of who he can be, if this his way of thinking, not just the mind that we talk about with King, Lover, and Warrior and Friend, but his way of thinking is about this size for him. So all that he's been up until this moment can be housed inside here. Now, what we have a problem with is we have problems thinking outside of this box. We have a tremendous problem thinking outside this box. Our box is a very limited one. That's his box. Dave was saying, this is my box. This is who I am. I can't be that anymore. Therefore, my effectiveness as a knight is in question. It's interesting, as he and I talked, I said, there's a bigger box. You just have to learn to think outside of this box and into that box. As a matter of fact, I'll submit to you, there's even a bigger box than that one. There's the opportunity for us to think bigger than you can possibly imagine, but you're going to have to get out of your comfortability. There's something else that we wrote. It's a prayer, a covenant with God, if you would, that spiritual side of us that's connecting vertically to God. Your soul's pulling you in that direction, and if you've connected with your spirit, I'm going to ask you also to look at that, and the possibility of signing that becomes very significant, because when you do that, you begin to say, I can think outside of this into that, maybe even larger than that box. Here's the prayer. Our solemn commitment. God, you have created us as males to be men. And from the beginning, we have failed to step up to your calling. Speak to me this day in clear terms regarding where I am on my manhood journey. Let me see the next steps of self-confrontation and development, and give me the strength to do the right thing. You feel the hinge as you're reading this? This whole thing's beginning to turn. May I have an interest and love towards my brothers who are on a similar journey, and let me be present and positive partner in our mutual work together. May my wife, children, church, worksite, community, and the world see my changes and rejoice in my contributions to their lives. Because of your strength, I pray. That's an amazing commitment when we do that. It's a commitment that says, you know what? I believe that I can think outside the box of what I've been thinking about until this moment. Dave's not the only guy. I had a guy this week say to me, you know what, Keith? You talk about protecting the heart of women. In fact, you talk about the protecting the heart of every woman. If you had known my woman, and it's funny because I actually knew his wife. He said, if you knew my woman, you wouldn't talk that way. I heard the lid close of his box. He had no way of thinking about a larger box. This was his world. This is all he could live in. This is the only way he could think. We're going to start to think outside of this box. I said to him, I submit to you that you can't change a human being, I can't change a human being, but you can be a knight in her life. Sometimes what she's become is because of the way we've been thinking up until this point. Maybe we need to start to think very, very different about this process. It was interesting. He walked away feeling like, I'm not sure I can do this. And then I asked him a question. I said, is your wife's wombs more at your hands or at others? And he looked down at the floor, and he looked up at me, and he said, my hands. I said, let me teach you to think outside the box into a larger box so your wife can realize that she can be safe and cared for and rescued. All right, so we're going to learn to do that. Now, how in the world are we going to get to the point where we're going to think outside the box? In order to do that, we're going to have some fun. We're actually going to kind of take today and treat it very, very differently. It's going to involve some interaction with you guys right there. It'll actually involve sort of a self-test. The 20 answers that you're going to fill in today are going to be self-tested as we go through them. So it'll be an evaluation. For some of you, that's more work. For some of you, that's easier. Whatever in the process, we're going to do that together in a different way to get us to begin to see how we're thinking. Are we thinking like a spandex male inside this little box? Are we thinking like a knight in a larger box? Or are you thinking actually beyond that, where you begin to think strategically and how do I change the forest as I see it? Not just bend it, but literally change it. Well, then you're going to get to even a larger box than the ones we're representing. So we're going to kind of go on that journey together. We're going to have some fun, and it's going to cause us to work on thinking together. So here, let me give you a couple questions that I think will help in the journey. Now, here's the way it's going to work. This is going to just be a weird deal. I'm going to read for you this statement. You're going to have to figure out the answer. The answer is not necessarily obvious in the very beginning. You're going to figure it out just between you and your little mind. At least if you're like mine, my little mind. And as we think about it, we're going to try to come up with it. And I'm going to give you 10 to 15 seconds to think about it. Now, I already know I'm in trouble, right? Asking a guy to think about anything for 10 to 15 seconds is bizarre. By 10 seconds, whatever we do as guys, it's over. I mean, it's just we don't go that long, right? I want you to just to think quietly. So I'm going to give you the question. Don't talk to another guy. And then what I'd like you to do is once you kind of have an idea, or if you have no idea, turn to a guy next to him and begin to share ideas. And if you two of you can't come up with an idea, go find two more guys until you can, if it takes you 112 guys, keep going around until you find everybody you need to work this out. Now, I want to give you a context of how we do this. I'm doing this in front of 700 to 800 guys in a large venue, and we're talking about these guys. And it's been amazing to watch their interaction with each other, but then the realization that there's resources all over the room. Guys think differently, right? And all we have to do is start to be able to think together outside the box. So what we're going to do is just have fun with these questions, all right? Let me give you the first one, and you try to figure it out. Don't say anything. Just think about it, and then I'll tell you when to talk to somebody else, and we'll go from there. All right, here's the first one. There's a man who lives on the top floor of a very tall building. Every day he gets the elevator down to the ground floor to leave the building to go to work. Upon returning from work, though, he can only travel halfway up the elevator and has to walk the rest of the way unless it's raining. Why? Now, I'm going to read it for you again because we had a lot of facts in there. We're going to get tired. All right. There is a man who lives on the top floor of a very tall building. Every day he gets the elevator down to the ground floor to leave the building to go to work. Upon returning from work, he can only travel halfway up the elevator, so he has to walk the rest of the way unless it's raining. Why? All right? 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Don't say a word. Just be quiet. Just think. Just think. Relax. Good. Cool. Don't say anything. Okay. All right. You got to stop what you're talking. Okay. Bring it here. Okay. Now, what I'd love you to do is share with each other your answers. You know, with our guys, they all yelp a bunch of answers to me, and we begin to find out how weird and creative men can be. But share with each other your answers. Just kind of yell to the other guy over here, have somebody just talk about it for a second, all right? So you're all hearing your theories. Yeah, aren't they weird? Are you listening to each other going, shoot, man? Because, you know, the answer's right? It's the problem is the guy's short. Right? He gets on the elevator, hits the lower button, goes down to the bottom. He gets the elevator, and later on in the day, he can't reach the upper buttons. So if nobody's on the elevator, he has to walk up the stairs. He can push maybe midway and then walks up the rest to his apartment, except for on rainy days. What happens on rainy days? He has an umbrella, so he pushes the button and can get up top. Now, if I were a short guy that couldn't reach the top, I'd be carrying an umbrella every day. But nonetheless, that was it. Okay, so that gives you one, kind of thinking outside the box. Let's do another one. All right. A man and his son are in a car accident. The father dies on the scene, but the child is rushed to the hospital. When he arrives, the surgeon says, I can't operate on this boy. He is my son. How can this be? All right, I'll read it for you again. A man and his son are in a car accident. The father dies on the scene, but the child is rushed to the hospital. When he arrives, the surgeon says, I can't operate on this boy. He's my son. How can this be? All right, more than one answer. Have fun together. All right, don't wait. Take 5 seconds. Think of your answer. Cool. All right, go ahead and share it with somebody else. Theories together. Man and son, car accident. Father dies. Surgeon can't operate. Got it? All right. Share your answers with each other. I mean, just talk to each other about your answers. What do you, not just your small group, but kind of yell it out to each other so you get an idea. All right. See, okay. Now, what are some of the answers? All right. I mean, I know some of you are thinking in terms of, okay, maybe it's an adoptive son. Maybe it's the mother, the surgeon's his mother, a woman. Maybe the son is a father as well. So, you know, there's all kinds of little things that kind of go on, right? You can see the possibility. What you're doing is thinking outside the box. In the box, we think one way. Now we're thinking outside the box. Let me give you another one. Think outside the box. One day, Carrie celebrated her birthday. 2 days later, her older twin brother, Terry, celebrated his birthday. How? All right, again. One day, Carrie celebrated her birthday. 2 days later, her older twin brother, Terry, celebrated his birthday. How can that be? All right, just go ahead and share. Don't even take any more time. It'll wear you out. All right? Yep, Terry, Carrie, birthday, 2 days, twins. Got it? All right, a couple of you guys nodding your heads enough to know that you got it. Now, tell the other guys in the whole group, what do you got? What are you thinking? Outside the box. Yeah. I know the theory about leap year and all that's possible, but Terry's the older brother, so that gets really confusing, so you can't go that way. But what's the other possibility? Well, her twin brother is not her twin. He's just a twin brother who's older. It works out. Okay, got it? Outside the box. We're thinking, working it out. All right, now, let's do this one because this will make it a little bit easier. This is one that Microsoft asks a lot of people when they apply for a job with Microsoft. All right, so if it's good enough for Microsoft, it must be good enough for us. Why is it better to have round manhole covers than square ones? Why is it better to have round manhole covers than square ones? Think outside the box, and I want you to talk to the whole group. Just talk together. Just as many people as you can talk to. Round manhole covers versus square ones. Now, think creatively. Think in terms of what you need to be doing here. Because if you think creatively at this particular point, you'll begin to understand that, oh yeah, okay, if it's a round manhole cover, it can't fall in the hole. Exactly right. That's one. I love that theory. One of you guys said that the manhole is round, therefore you need a round manhole cover. All right. You don't have to worry about fitting it on. There's a bunch of reasons why manhole covers are round. What you've been doing is thinking outside the box. Now, that's just about silly things that, guys, really, to be honest with you, other than having some fun with it, it doesn't really matter the answer. But there's a lot of areas that do matter the answer. For example, behind me, on the screen you'll notice this box, and inside of it, it would be some bottles and some kegs on either side of it. And for some of you, when we show that picture, that puts you right in a box, a way that you think. You struggle with addictions, you struggle with an area, and you go, oh my goodness, that's my box. I mean, I live in that world. And I want you to understand that we want you to think outside of that box. So you think outside this one, you think outside that one. We're not having to be forced into thinking one way. We're going to learn to think another way. Knights have a tremendous advantage because they've learned to think outside of their box, all right? So in order to do that, here's what we're going to do. Well, I'm going to walk through 8 things about how a spandex male thinks and 12 things about how a knight thinks. And what we're going to do is we're going to test ourselves in this process, all right, to see how well we're doing getting outside our box. What I'll do on one side is if the statement is true for you, absolutely, totally true, it's me, you got me, that's a 1. So you just put 1. So not only do you write in the answer, but you put 1 next to it, that's it. Or if it's completely untrue for me, it's a 5. So for all 20 statements, if it's true, it's a 1. If it's untrue, it's a 5, or anywhere in between. So we 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Now, some of you, your personality is such that you only use the 1, the 3, or the 5. Some of you need the 4. Some of you need 4.5, 6, 7, whatever it is. Just basically, I want you to evaluate yourself 1 to 5. True is 1. 5 isn't true. All right, so we're going to walk through how to think outside the box as spandex males. All right, a spandex male in his thinking, he is A, self-focused. Self-focused, write that down. That means he does not think about anything but his own needs, ego, fame, wealth, power, etc. This is all about you. All right, so if you tend to be egocentric, everything's focused on you, so that whatever it is, you see a picture like you do on the screen, and it drives you back to some area, and it's all about your struggles. Okay, I tend to live in the 1 category. It's about me. Or it's not true of me at all. I'm not very self-focused. I'm very much focused on others. That's a 5. All right, and anywhere in between. Okay, score it. Got it? See how that works? So you should have the answer, self-focused, written down plus 1 to 5 somewhere. All right, that's just your answer. All right, good. Now we're gonna add all these up at the end. So I know that'll get hard for some of us, and so that's why we have like shoes, and we can take our socks off and we can count with everything, because we're gonna add all this up and come to a total of where we come across as guys, who we are, how we do it, how we think. All right, thinking outside the box. Okay, letter B. Spandex male in his thinking, he tends to act like a know-it-all. acts like a know-it-all. Now, write down know-it-all, and then I want you to put 1 to 5. All right, now here's the problem. I did really good, question 1. I gotta be honest with you, I am really not very self-focused. I really am not. I tend to be very giving. That's a development of my knighthood over the years. So I'm like on a high number. I'm 4 or 5, right? I get to this one, and the highest number I can give me on my positive day is a 3. Let me give you an example. I'm in the gym, which is always a joke. Okay, I'm in a gym. Now, you know I have a trainer, and my trainer, he's trying to teach me how to lift weights properly. I'm in the gym, and I notice a guy not lifting weights properly. He's just right down a little bit away from me, and he's not lifting the weights. And I got this little thing inside of me that says, I got to go tell him. I got to walk over there and show him how to lift the weights properly. Now, look at me. Fortunately, the place has mirrors, so I got about 2 steps, looked at myself, went, yeah, he's going to look at me and go, dude, whatever you're doing, I'm not doing, right? It was pretty simple. That's that know-it-all side of me. So I might do well on question number 1. In question number 2, it's 3 or 2, something like that, all right? Look at C. He's afraid to stop and reflect because of unresolved issues lurking in his background. Yeah, like on our box on the screen, like on the box here, there are things that are deep within us. You know what's interesting? When I challenged that guy, Dave, to think outside of his box about what makes a man, he had some freedom that he lived in that was great. He had the opportunity to see himself very differently and function very differently. And in that process, he goes, you know what? I don't have to be just physical, but I have things to contribute, even though my body isn't responding in a variety of ways using his whole core. It's opening up the box and seeing what's in there. Some of us have to be very careful because we're afraid to open that box because there's some unresolved wounds, father wound, mother wound. There's struggles with addictions. There's struggles with all kinds of different things that have kind of crept into our lives. So how are you doing on that one? Are you afraid to open the box? Are you afraid to think outside the box? If you are, that's a 1. If you're not, okay, it's a 5 and somewhere in between. All right, good. D. Hispanics male and is thinking he wants to just know and be right and get on to the next thing. Now, I was doing okay on this stinking test until that one. This one gets me. I'm in serious trouble when I get to this one. Because I just, again, remember, I'm sort of that know-it-all, but I also just want to get it done and moving on. Accomplishment is everything. I'd rather get a job done okay and have it off my do list than have it done exceptional. That's the way I slide. So my number actually here is a 1. All right, so I don't know where yours is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, true to you. All right, look at E. Avoid the effort necessary to problem solve and to learn. I don't like to think things through. I don't like to problem solve. I don't like to learn. If that's you, 1. If it's not you, then it's 5. So where is that process? All right, put that number down. F. Hispanics male fails to recognize that all thinking has distortions within it, so he's surprised when things do not work out the way he expected. When you have a plan and everybody's going to follow you, you get surprised that it didn't go according to the way you thought it was going to go. So 1 to 5, okay? So Hispanics male thinking. Look at G. Does not properly evaluate others' faulty thought process. In essence, you're like a lemming where you follow the lemmings off the cliff, you just follow who's in front of you. If you have a tendency to be that kind of individual where you're not evaluating what other people are thinking, you just kind of join in. If you sort of get influenced all the time in gang mentality, you kind of follow with the crowd, 1 to 5, all right? Last one in this area. He often reacts instead of thinking but does not realize it. I often just kind of am like this explosive little thing. Instead of my box, when it opens up, it's just ugly, and so I keep trying to close it, but you have to actually think beyond it. You have to think bigger than it, all right? So you tend to explode up a little bit. Is that who you are? All right, now, got it all together? Now, let's add up the scores. So let's assume that your number is you got 1s on everything, or 1s and 2s on everything, you're 8 to 15. If you have, and that makes you guys spandex thinkers. Man, in fact, if you're an 8, you're our poster boy for spandex. So way to go. All right. So 8 to 15, I'm a spandex thinker as a way of life. If it's 16 to 23, then you're leaning spandex. And because most spandex guys are not totally honest with themselves, you're probably closer to an 8 to 15 than you are whatever. And I'm comfortable with these numbers because when I added up mine, I got to 24. So I got out of the leaning spandex. I actually moved into 24 And as you get into that area, 24 basically to 31, you and I become what we would call leaning knight. So I just squeaked in when I did my test. So where are you? Okay, leaning knight, 24 to 31, and then 32 on out. Where are you in this process? How do you do this whole world? All right, as you work this out, if you're at those top numbers, you're a knight. So right now, and here's the way it's working. I know the way it's working. If you're sitting here and you're going, dude, I'm a knight. You're sitting here with your book open, you're fanning yourself with it, so the guy next to you can see it, because you're doing all right. And if you're a Spanx male, you're kind of saying, this is the stupidest test ever. I don't even want to talk about it, all right? Because we know we don't want to be that, right? Now, let's redeem it. Let's do it the other way. What if you're a knight thinker? What if you think like a knight? Again, outside the box, you're thinking like a knight. So a knight is willing to do the hard work that thinking requires. Always underline that, write that down. Does the hard work that thinking requires. So here's what it is. The knight realizes that productive thinking takes time and that speed is the biggest competitor to good decision making. So you are willing to slow it down and think well. If that's true of you, man, you know it and you do it, you're a 1. If it's not, you're a 5. My number is sort of mid-range on that one. All right? B, improves with practice, effort, and as more information is gathered. I improve as a way of life. I actually believe I can accomplish things. One of the things my dad always struggled with is he doesn't believe he can do anything. He didn't believe he could. So he was always impressed that I could take a car apart. Now, I couldn't put it back together, but I was also pretty good at taking it apart. He was always impressed that I was willing to try things. My dad actually didn't ever believe he could improve. He actually believed he was stuck in who he was. And so his box, very closed, could not ever conceive of getting larger or bigger than that. He just never, ever thought he could do it. He couldn't improve. So if that's where you are, my dad would have been a 5 on that one. Where are you? All right? Look at C. Knows that no information or learning is irrelevant. Nothing that you receive is not of value. So that you're always sorting through your mind, you're always taking this information because it's valuable. Where are you in that process? You value information, you don't. 1 to 5. D, has built-in humility because he accepts that he does not know everything. And that's really an interesting process that we have as guys because we struggle through this a lot. We think, okay, what do I know? What do I know? What do I know? Who am I? And you know what? We be really careful about how we measure ourselves. So it's not about us kind of strutting around. It's rather us saying, you know what? The more I know, the more I realize I don't know. And I'm willing to understand that. Where are you on that? 1 to 5, all right? Next one. Understands that knowing how to retrieve information is far more important than relying upon memory. In other words, you're using computers, you're using all the kind of things that you and I need in our lives to make this thing work better. So we're retrieving information. Again, knowledge. Remember, thinking. You're going to have knowledge put into this thing to think bigger than you've been thinking. Get free from the box you've been living in. All right? All right, let's look at the next one. F. The knight guides his thinking process using these basic principles. Now, before you write down the answers to these basic principles, I want to talk to you about the nightly news. It's in the box there on your sheet. There's a judge of Israel named Ehud. He is going to actually rescue the nation of Israel from an evil king named Eglon. Now, this king, is this huge, fat thing that just is sort of like a typical king, not the kings we talk about that serves, but it's all about him, right? This man is doing a tremendous amount of damage to the nation of Israel. Ehud has some advantages. He has to give taxes to this guy and be involved in having a meeting with him, so he's going to have a private meeting with the king. But he also is left-handed. He takes a dagger, puts it in his sheath, straps it to the inside of his right thigh, so when the guards search him, you always search for a right-handed guy. They don't search for a left-handed guy. He goes in, gives the taxes to the king, leaves, says, I forgot something, goes back, sees the king. Private meeting, says, I got something I got to tell you. The king wants to know. It's all about him anyway. And so as the king leans in to listen, Ehud, left-handed, pulls this out, stabs the man. And when he stabs him, he actually executes him in such a way that the knife sinks deep into his stomach. Fat rolls around the knife. You don't want to get that one back. Leave it where it is. And he leaves. Locks the doors and leaves. there'll be a huge battle that will follow, and the nation of Israel will win the battle. But here's what he did in order to do this. He thought outside the box. He thought, okay, what do I have? Who do I have? Look at these 4 principles that Ehud used. 1, I stop before I move. I got to stop. Okay, this is night thinking. Stop. Slow down. Don't try to do this quick. 2, think. Think it through. Think of the advantages. Think what you have available. What do you all have to work on? That's your whole core, by the way. Then decide. That's yourself. We're going to learn about this in the next few weeks. And then act. Then do what you have to do. Step out and take advantage of that. So how good are you at stop thinking, deciding, and acting? Give yourself a 1 to 5. If you're good at it, it's a 1. If you're bad at it, a 5. So think it through. All right? Good. Now, G. While making a plan and following it, he willingly changes his thinking when he learns it's wrong. You know what? This is the whole concept. Remember, you can't teach old dog new tricks? Oh, yes, you can. Outside the box, guys, you can learn to think. I don't care how old, I don't care how much life experience you are. As a matter of fact, wisdom demands that you learn how to think outside the box, right? 1 to 5. How are you doing in that? You're willing to change. H. He invests his time, energy, and effort into his thinking process. He institutes the proper action. After he's invested all this, then he acts, right? Think before you act, all right? 1 to 5. I. Recognizes that his thoughtful preparation and reflections are vital cornerstones of forest living. As a knight, you know that this is absolutely key stuff for you to do what you're supposed to do. So you and I stop and say, okay, I'm going to have to be prepared and think this through. Reflection. Knights like to reflect. Knights actually find time to think things through. 1 to 5. How are you doing in that area? Preparation. Okay, I looked at my score there, by the way. 4. So I'm working on my knighthood there. All right, J. Knows that he needs others for feedback in order to improve himself. Now, you know I gave my last score because this one's a 1 for me. I actually have learned this. I have amazing guys in my life. I've told you about who they are. These guys speak into who I am. My sons do that. My wife does that. It allows me to listen to others, all right? How are you doing in that? 1 to 5. Next one. K. Chooses to learn and specifically develop his area of personal giftedness. Do you say, what am I good at and how will I develop it? It gets pretty exciting. It'll make a lot of sense when we talk about next week when we talk about genetics and instincts. How are you willing to take what you have and work within it? All right? Last one. Has a healthy skepticism of the forest. You have a healthy skepticism of the forest. You expect the forest to be wrong. You expect the forest to move against you. Okay, now total up your scores. Total them up again. All right, real quick, just walk through. Isn't it cool that you have calculators on phone these days? Because you can do this a lot easier. Yeah. Got it? All right, you pretty much know what zone you're in, all right? If you're a night thinker, your score is somewhere, because you had 12 issues here, somewhere between 12 and 23, if you're a night thinker. That's the way you work. All right? If you lean night in your thinking, 24 to 35. If you lean night, I'm a night leaner. I'm leaning night in both the tests, the 8 and the 12 spandex males and this. That's where I'm at, all right? If you lean spandex, you're 36 to 47. If you lean spandex in your thinking. And if you are spandex thinker, you're 48 to 60. All right? So as we work through all of these numbers, we put them all together and we go, okay, who am I? Now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to have the courage to go with your guys in your campfire, and I want you to share with them your numbers. Don't change them now. Just share with them your numbers. And let's talk a little bit about why our numbers are the way they are. Yeah, the cool part about this test is it actually lets you think, am I moving away from spandex in my thinking, and am I thinking like a knight? But there are actually some different concepts that are being covered in those, and so your scores might reflect a difference in thinking. I want you to share with you guys your scores, and by now you're not judging each other. You're not, and if any of you get puffed up, by the way, if you get puffed up because you have pretty good night scores, and you get puffed up, you tested yourself wrong. Because knights don't get proud, they go humble, right? It's always in that direction. So I want you to share it in your group. And the reason I want you to share it in your group is this, that there's a bigger box to open in your mind. And we want to do that. We want to celebrate where each other are and begin to move ourselves very deliberately so the hinge of our lives moves differently. So whether you struggle with some of the things on the screen or whether that represents a bigger box to you, whatever it is, we're going to start to move together. And the reason I want you to tell it to the guys in your campfires is when we do it together, we begin to realize that I will be able to think outside my box because other guys will help me. Enjoy the journey, enjoy your campfire, and we'll see you next week as we talk about genetics and instincts.